It's the Hoffman Show on the team, 980 on a Wednesday, and not just any Wednesday. It is Wednesday, July 24th, 2024, the day that football came back to us in the DMV. That's right, the Commanders open training camp, and Anthony, we know, because we were there. Live, in person, watching people not in football pads do football things. Because that's how the first couple of days work. Acclimation period, first practice, nice tidy 75 minutes. I'd imagine they'll go 90 tomorrow and 105 or so on Friday and then or Thursday, and then they'll get back to it on Sunday. No, I guess tomorrow is Thursday. 90 on Friday, off day Saturday. Pads go on early next week. So I'm excited to see how it all goes down. I'm excited to see how Dan Quinn builds it. I'm excited to see how it continues to grow. I thought there was a couple of interesting things from today. We'll definitely get into it. We'll also tell you that we'll continue our preseason countdowns and previews. 4:30 today, we reveal the third most important player for the Commanders in 2024. And Anthony, I will reveal right now that I shook hands with this player today.
You did indeed.
This player saw me, dapped me up, was like, "What's up, Craig?" And I was like, "What's up?" Can't say his name. Gotta wait till 4:30.
That's close.
That's how it goes. We also preview the safeties coming up at 6 and at 5:30. Had a wonderful, wonderful chat with Benjamin St. Juste, who highlights something that I think we'll go ahead and tell you this part of the conversation. Now you'll hear it from BSJ later. Highlighted the difference, two main things between the old regime, the new regime. What's old is out, what's new is in, and I think a lot of times, especially on day one, it's really easy to say, oh, this is better. But if you listen to guys talk about Dan Quinn and about this staff and about how everybody and everything is operating, it comes down to a couple of key things. One is a mentality, and two is the execution, and you need both to be able to win in this league. And John Allen, who spoke after the practice today, talked about one word that has come up in just about every single conversation that I've had with anybody in Burgundy and Gold at any rank, any level since Dan Quinn and Adam Peters took over.
Yeah, it's been a lot. I mean, I think he brings a lot of competition, amongst the guys. He's going to challenge us every day, and he brings a lot of energy. So as a coach that, when he first came, I asked a lot of guys around the league about him, and I haven't had one bad thing said about him. Everyone who's ever played for him has loved it, and so far I've been loving it.
That word competition comes up a lot, and it is how you get the best out of highly competitive people. You have to do it in a healthy way. You have to make sure it's channeled properly. You have to make sure that it's constructive. But they do that. They find ways to make drills competitive, whether it's with yourself or with each other. Did you do this better than you did it yesterday? Did you do this better than your teammate right now? Let's create a scoring system for how many throws you hit if you're a quarterback. There is room for individualism while also room to be the best version of yourself, whether that is competing with yourself or with your teammates in a way that is constructive. The other word that I think about a lot right now is intent and intention, whichever version of that you want. And it's something that I remember Darryl Tapp saying to us when he sat down in the spring as the defensive line coach, and how DQ is big on intention. And I was listening to an interview that I feel like you're going to have to get used to me referencing, because it was one of the better coach interviews that I've heard in a long, long time. My friend Robert Mays from the Athletic Football Show went out to L.A. and sat down with Sean McVay for about an hour. And Sean talks about intention a lot, being intentional with coaching exactly what you want out of a given drill, being intentional with the roles that you assign certain players to. And when we talked to BSJ, that's something that he talked about, how they're very specific with what they want him to do, and what they want him to do might be different than what Michael Davis needs to do. Or they might want the same thing out of them, but they know how to, in order to get the result that they want, they have to coach it a little bit different. And that individuality, that attention to detail, that intention, that competition all comes together in a better place for everyone to operate. That will, yes, in the meantime, probably just be a better place to work that's more fun and creates a competitive football team, but eventually, when combined with the right amount of talent, will win games. And I think that's the thing that I think about for this year for Washington. I've listened to a lot of national podcasts over the last 2 weeks or so, including Mina Kimes' series of power hours that she does. I loved this concept that she did during the draft, and she's taken it to previewing the regular season, where she takes two teams and says, okay, team number one is the San Francisco 49ers. Team number two is the Kansas City Chiefs. Who do you think is better? And her guest will be like, I got the Chiefs. They won the Super Bowl. I think they're still the best. Bang, bang. Okay, next, that means the 49ers are still on the board, and the next team is the Baltimore Ravens, 49ers. Okay, Ravens versus Lions. Ravens versus whatever, or Ravens. Then it's that team, and you get the point. But in ranking these teams or listening to divisional previews or listening to whatever, I'm not going to be like I was last year where I sit here and think that I know better than people who have a good scope, especially the people that I respect who cover the entire league when it comes to this roster. Do I think that there are pieces of this roster that are tremendously underrated? Yes. And that is the nature of being local, of understanding who certain players are and where they can go in a much cleaner way than if you had to try to do that for every single team. I'm pretty sure Quan Martin's a really good football player. When ESPN National did their big list of top 20 or top teams with talent under 25 and Quan Martin's name wasn't mentioned, I feel like that's a pretty significant oversight. But I also know that because I got to watch Quan Martin in a part of the season last year where he was actually playing really well and the Commanders were totally non-competitive, and why would anybody nationally have been paying attention to them? But realistically, even with that bias, even with the optimism of locality, if you will, I know this is a bottom third roster in the NFL still, that there's too many holes on the offensive line to be a legitimate like NFC contender. Does that mean that they can or they can't go 9-7, or even maybe, or I guess they can't go 9-7 because they don't play that amount of games anymore. They can't go 9-8 or 10-7 and make the playoffs? No. Allegretti might be ready for a bigger role, even though he was a backup in Kansas City. And Biotish can be super solid. And Cosme maybe is the top 5 guard in the NFL that some people think he is versus the 15th to 20th best guard in the NFL that others seem to think he is. Wiley and whoever plays left tackle get protected by Cliff in the scheme. Obviously, you need Jayden Daniels to have a CJ Stroud-esque year. There's a lot of stuff that has to go right. But realistically, when you have that many what ifs, that probably is because your roster is not quite where you want it to be 2-3 years from now if you're Adam Peters. But the point of all of that is I want to judge this team day in, day out, and especially once we get into the season, game in, game out, based off of how they play up to their potential. So not hey, everything schematically has to go right. But like, are players who are, the 10 to 15th best, not top 10 at their position, 10 to 15th best, or guys that are kind of more average, 15 to 20, whatever, depending on the position, 50th percentile, let's say, are they at least playing to that consistently? Maybe they miss a read, maybe they get a ball thrown just over their head, because that's the margin in the NFL, right? Is, oh, this guy's in coverage and a great player gets his fingertip on it and deflects it, and a middle player gets less of a fingertip on it and the ball's completed through his wickets. Like that's the margins in this league. And so I want to be able to judge them, or when I judge them, I want to judge them based off of who they are realistically. And are they competing? Are they getting the most out of what is still a flawed roster? I know it was a long windup to get to that point, because that's what failure was last year. And, through day one, there's nothing major to kind of say on that. But I think in the conversations and in hearing some key pieces speak, in talking to DQ over the course of the spring, when we had him on the show at the Super Bowl and asking him questions at press conferences, and the one or two chances I've had to ask him another thing off to the side here or there, just getting to know how he thinks and listening to other interviews, etc. I want to see how they get the most out of what they have. And that is even more solidified today in some of the conversations I had and seeing how they operate. And I think they have a great chance at that. But to me, that is success this year. Success for the Commanders this year as they open camp is every single day doing exactly what they want to do. Competing, getting the most out of what they've got, and then we'll see where the talent takes us. We'll take some other observations from camp next, including two guys who stuck out as just being in the best. Like they always say, he's in the best shape of his life. There are two guys in particular that I think are in the best shape of their lives, and they are longtime members of the Commanders and very, very important to their success this year. Speaking of important to success, we will talk about our third most important Commander on our top 10 countdown at 4:30, plus how the quarterbacks split the reps today, and does that tell us anything moving forward? All of that next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And, of course, we do stream live on YouTube if you'd like as well at the Team 980. Got it right here. Got my notebook. We're ready to go. Empty it out. See, it's not even a digital notebook. Even though I was on the beat, Anthony, I was never an actual write it down guy. I was always a notes in my phone guy. But the more I've thought about it, as I've become an old man, at least in my soul, I remember in school, I remembered more stuff when I wrote it down. So I was like, you want to know what? And I also feel like it's faster. Although I will say, I was talking with John Keim about this today. Keim has like this scribble shorthand that is literally illegible to any other human on the planet. Like, when doctors write stuff down, that's the classic example, like doctor handwriting. And it's like, how would anybody read this? And they're like, oh, it says your leg's broken. You're like, what? My leg's broken? And how'd you read that? Keim has a note system that's just totally ridiculous. Might as well be Sanskrit, ancient Egyptian, something. And I'm here writing like actual notes. I need a better system.
Yeah, I don't really have anything for you.
I didn't expect you to.
Okay. Maybe do you think Keim is doing one of those things where he writes the first letter of each word?
I don't know. Sometimes I can tell because he'll do a numbers. I'll be like, 52, whatever. Which brings us back to what's in this notebook.
Yes.
Not just the fact that I have one. Quarterbacks today, Jayden Daniels was the second quarterback in all the individual work, which is actually kind of what I expected, that they would give Marcus Mariota the veteran nod in kind of the individual drills. Hey, Marcus, you're the vet. Show us the way. And, in a couple of those drills, I thought Mariota looked pretty good. He should. It's individual work. But there's like the one drill where they were throwing balls to the back of the end zone, and his had a little better zip on it than Jayden's. It's actually something that I wonder about with Jayden. And when I say wonder about, to be very clear, not in a doubting way, like I just genuinely wonder. He looks so unconcerned with some of the individual work where he just doesn't even look like he's trying. But it's also because he's so fluid as an athlete. It's not like you can see his face. He's got a face mask on and a helmet. But just his whole body language, you're like, dang, this is easy, huh? And I do wonder if there's times where they're like, hey, man, I need you to lock in a little bit more. And is he like, okay? Or is he like, I'm locked in. This is just what it looks like. But on a couple of those, Jayden's kind of, it looks like he's going through the motions. And he's, one of the results of that productivity-wise is like Marcus has a little more zip on some of the balls there. And it looks like he's really trying to effort it. But when they get out there during team stuff, you see which one's the better quarterback. And it's the kid, and he's wearing 5. So that's something that is worth pointing out. Whatever Jayden's doing is clearly working, for him. And that's another thing too. I actually just put a video of Terry going through a wide receiver drill on my YouTube page at Craig Hoffman on the Shorts page, if you want to check it out. And Terry like tempos this route really nicely. And I even heard Bobby Ingram, the receivers coach, say like, go a tempo that works for you to get the footwork right. So not every drill is about about speed. Not every drill is about going through it as hard as possible. Sometimes you're just trying to get the footwork right. You're just trying to get the trajectory of a ball right. You're trying to do that stuff at a slower tempo so that you can build up to doing it at the faster tempo. So I think some of that is what's going on with Jayden probably, and also he's just so darn fluid as an athlete that he makes stuff look easy and looks like he's not trying, even though he's out there doing what he's supposed to. The way actually, Anthony, the way I wrote it down in the notebook, Daniels always looks not stressed.
It's good to, be stress-free,
I feel like you're a pretty stress-free guy a lot of times.
Yes, most of the time I am stress-free.
Which actually makes it really easy for me to tell when you're stressed. I'm like,
yes.
What's going on? Yo, let's talk to me. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
I did find it interesting that they switched and again, interesting is the word here. I'm not prescribing good or bad to this. I'm just saying interesting that they switched to Daniels working with the ones the second they got into 7-on-7. So the first snap of regular team 11-on-11 was Mariota. When they got into the red zone 7-on-7 stuff, Daniels was the first team quarterback. And it was interesting too from a defensive personnel standpoint. They were actually in a base defense, and you're like, what? 3 linebackers together? And it happened because Quan was like kind of playing down in the box area, and I was looking for a third safety, and I was like, wait, there's not one. And then I look over, and Anthony Pittman, number 58, veteran linebacker who they brought in this offseason, is out there with Wagner and Luvu. And I was like, 1, 2, 3 linebackers. And so well, I'll be damned. I don't think that's how they're going to start the season. I think they'll be playing mostly nickel and playing with a lot of 3 safety, and Sanders still will be out there quite a bit and the whole deal. But that's how they started their red zone. But on that first play, Daniels just throws a freaking beauty to B-Rob. And it winds up being kind of his favorite throw. It wasn't actually a box fade, but it's kind of the same throw. B-Rob runs a corner, and Daniels just dots him. B-Rob's able to 1-2 the feet in the kind of 5 yards deep into the end zone on the sideline. And it happened in perfect timing. Quan blitzed off the weak side. So the side away, or Daniels, his blind side. And Daniels, I don't know if he moved away from the blitz or he just threw on time. I didn't have a clean enough look at the pocket. But he gets it out before the blitz gets home and just drops it in. And you're like, this dude's something else. But I also love, for the second year in a row, we'll see if it actually makes it to the season this time. But B-Rob being down the field as a receiver, his fluidity as a receiver is mega. But that was fun to see. And Daniels, I think, in the 7-on-7, in the red zone stuff, I didn't chart throws or anything like that. But just kind of taking it in, I thought Daniels was the most effective quarterback again. And I feel like that's going to happen basically every day.
Yeah, definitely think. I want to say he actually went 4 for 5. There was one PBU when they were in the red zone situation. But yeah, the pass to B-Rob, you couldn't have scripted it any better. And
on the first play,
exactly. And I just think it's all about execution right now. Making sure you're going through the right reads, the progressions, and just getting the ball out on time. And he looked good today. Like he looked solid.
Yeah. Hey, Brian Dable, what do you want me to do on against this coverage? Throw a touchdown? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that answer. Yeah. Well, guess what, Brian Dable? Bad news. You didn't get that dude.
No, sir.
No. We got him here in Washington. A couple other notes on the offensive side. Watching Ben Sinnott in drills is fun. That dude is an athlete. Just the fluidity he had. He caught an out route kind of right in front of us in the on-air portion of practice where he just running and he had to outstretch, and the way he went out and used his length to snatch the ball, immediately gets back into like a fluid running. There's another route that he just kind of gives a nice little shoulder shake and gets upfield, and just the fluidity that he has athletically is so big time. And I just feel like if I'm a linebacker or even some safeties, like I'm going to really struggle to cover that dude, especially as he figures out how to tempo routes and like learn some of the dark arts of route running, if you will, from Zach Ertz. You saw some snaps from under center with Mariota in there. I don't remember seeing any with Daniels inherently, but I'm sure if Mariota ran some, Daniels must have. But like to know that there's some under center stuff in, that was a big question with Cliff. Because there's just value to running the ball from the dot. There's a way you can get your play action stuff going. There's a lot of value in having a quarterback under center as an option. And so to see that that's in, you also saw some read option from Daniels. So that was cool to know that that's going to be in. Again, this is not giving away anything that's mega, not giving away any major secrets. I think this is the kind of stuff that we expected, but just to see it as part of the day one install, to see it in some of the different packages, that was cool. And then the other big note that I had is defensive personnel, just something I'll be tracking throughout camp for sure. Quan and Chin were the two safeties to start, which is what I thought it would be. Defoe in with a second. I'd assume that like Defoe's going to play this year, especially those 3 safety looks. But I thought that was interesting. You had BSJ and Emmanuel Forbes playing starting corner, which that's my guess of how it will ultimately play out. But like that's very up in the air. And then speaking of former first-round picks, old 52's out there on the edge with the third stringers. Yeah, Jamin out there, and he's got a long way to go as a pass rusher. But there's going to be I think how it'll go is there's going to be reps that make him look like an all-pro because he's so freakishly athletic, and he'll just hit a couple right. And the question is, with what frequency does he look really good, and with what frequency does he look like a guy who's a linebacker blitzing and he's out of position and he doesn't really belong playing the edge? And like once they get the pads on, what does it look like? What does it look like when he's got to stop the run? He's got to set a hard edge. Like it's not just pass rusher if he's going to make the full position switch. So something that we're tracking for sure. Day one, But there's a lot more to it than just a couple of reps here and there in practice, but something to keep an eye on for sure. All right, who is the third most important commander for the 2024 season? We've counted down 10 through 4 on our way to number 1. Give you a wild guess who that might be. But number 3 revealed next on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980 If you are driving home and want to check us out when you get home, of course, the Odyssey app, you can just be like, hey, Alexa, if you got one of those. Sorry for activating your Alexa. Hey, Alexa, play the Team 980. And there will be. You can turn on your smart TV on YouTube at the Team 980. All different ways that you can consume the show as well as on your radio. All right, we're doing this every single day at 4:30. We are counting down the top 10 Commanders of the 2024 season in terms of importance. This is the part of the show, Anthony, where I try to remember all of them off the top of my head. Are you ready?
I am, sir.
Okay, excellent. Number 10 was Dorrance Armstrong. Number 9 was Emmanuel Forbes. Number 8 was Brandon Coleman. Number 7 was the man who spoke today at the podium, or one of the two, John Allen. Number 6, who would have guessed that I would mess up the numbers before I mess up the name? Number 6 was Quan Martin. Number 5 was Deron Payne. Number 4 yesterday was Bobby Wagner. And that brings us to today. Number 3. And that man. That man.
Number 3.
Is Terry McLaurin. Terry comes in at number 3 because he is the number 1 weapon offensively on this team outside the quarterback. And you might have noticed he hasn't been mentioned yet. And so perhaps one of the final 2 people might wind up being the quarterback. But in terms of being quarterback friendly, in terms of making sure that Jayden Daniels, presuming that he is, the quarterback, is going to have a great season. There is no way that they are a top half, nevertheless top 10 offense this year, unless Terry has I don't even want to say 1,000-yard season, 1,200-yard season. If they want to be that premier, he's got to be elite. And I think it's a very interesting time for Terry in his career. He's getting near 30. The contract decision is coming up again for him in terms of, do they want to extend him? Do they want to let him play this one out? Do they wind up cutting him to save money and moving on? Like, there's a lot of questions, a lot of directions this could go in a precarious spot for Terry. And I think this is also depending on how quickly Jayden, first of all, ascends to QB1, which I think will be pretty instant, and 2, how well he ascends to playing good NFL quarterback, which is going to be longer because it's hard and he's a rookie. Not any lack of faith in Jayden, just the reality of the situation. This might be the best quarterback that Terry McLaurin has ever played with. And I was having this conversation with Logan actually the other day, and I was basically like, if you switch Ayuk and Terry, is Terry putting up the numbers that Ayuk is in San Francisco? And I don't think there'd be a huge difference. I think Ayuk's probably a little bit better. I think Ayuk is younger, which makes the contractual part of all of the Ayuk discussion very interesting. But player for player, skill set for skill set, I don't know that Terry's that far off of being a guy who, under better circumstances, with a better quarterback, and certainly within a better offensive scheme, one that maximized him and that surrounded him in an ecosystem with better players as opposed to all being on him, that he couldn't have put up crazy numbers some of these last bunch of years where he's put up really good ones doing it all by himself. With the potpourri of quarterbacks that have been here, with the whatever the heck Scott Turner was running and whatever Eric Bieniemy was trying to run last year, that wasn't good and let defenses focus on him. He's been fairly reliable. And now you have a guy like Ertz who can dictate coverage potentially. We'll see what level Zach Ertz is at. But you have, other players, Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, and then the running ability of Daniels that just massively impacts the ability to scheme up stuff that gets Terry advantageous matchups, gets Terry in space, and lets Terry do the things that make Terry really, really special. And those things, to be clear, are get deep because he's got 4.3 vertical speed, and he's harder than hell to tackle once he's got the ball. And I think that's the undersold part of his game. Like, we've seen him go up and moss Stephon Gilmore, the big play in Indy a bunch of years ago, the homecoming game for him. Like, he's got signature moments. But I think when I think of like a signature Terry play, game in, game out, is when he catches the slant, when he catches the in, when he catches the screen. And it's clumsy a little bit in the way he catches it. He's not the most fluid catcher of the football, but he doesn't really drop balls. And he just gets the ball in his hands, and it becomes a bulldozer. He becomes a guy that just cannot be arm tackled. And I think that is so incredibly valuable because at the end of the day, the point is to get the ball in the hands of playmakers and let them make plays and ultimately score. And you need to help them make it easier, give them those opportunities. And I think this staff understands that, and Cliff will do that for Terry. Zach Ertz talked about this with me and Logan the other day. Part of the reason that he wanted to come to Washington is because he knows that Cliff gets the ball to his playmakers, and he's the best one on the team. And so that is part of the most important formula, right? How good is the player? What kind of ceiling do they have? And what do they mean to the team? He's the number one weapon. The ceiling, we don't even know yet. I mean, could he be a 1,400-yard receiver? I think with the right opportunities, he could. Is he going to be this year? I don't think so. But if you put him in San Francisco or you put him in freaking KC with Mahomes, like, yeah, I think Terry's that good. But the other part of this is, when you talk about most important, is what kind of safety netting is underneath the player. And so this is the difference in some of the guys that we ranked 10, 9, 8, where you go, there is a way, based off other guys at the position, the importance of the position itself, other options at the position, where the guy either doesn't play well, or in Brandon Coleman's case, we put it number 8, doesn't play at all. And the team is still fine, and maybe even good. I do not think there is any way that Terry McLaurin is not really good, that this team is good. They could run the football well. If you can't take the top off the defense, you can't get your number one wide receiver the ball, you're limited offensively. If he gets hurt, is Jahan talented? Yes. Is he Terry? No. So you don't, and Terry McLaurins don't grow on trees. You can't just go find the next guy. There is no backup Terry. There's backup receivers. There's no backup Terry. And so the what happens to their ceiling if he's out is it tremendously comes down. And that's why he's number 3. And that's why he was almost number 2, to be honest. I think that he is as important to Jayden's success as anybody else that will put on a helmet for this team this year. And that is the nature of being a number 1 weapon on a team. And for an offensive coordinator in Cliff Kingsbury who gets his guys opportunities, we're going to find out, I hope, just how good Terry is. Are there other bumps in that plan? Potentially? Yeah, absolutely. Cliff has got to do it at the big level. We've never seen him as just an OC. So can he be the best version of himself? Jayden is a rookie. And then, of course, there's what is Terry's performance like? He's been great, but there are holes you pick in his game where he's not the best route runner. He's not the smoothest catcher of the football. Like, he's not, obviously, Justin Jefferson. He's not, Justin Jefferson's size either. And so that limits things to some capacity, even if he plays bigger than he is. So what does it look like when it all comes together? We're going to find out, and how good that goes, I think, will help determine in a major, major way in a league where explosive plays hold the key to winning, or at least hold the key to scoring. Preventing them on defense plus getting them on offense holds the key to winning. He's the explosive guy. How does he do? If it's well, team does well. If not well, team doesn't have a shot. And that's why Terry McLaurin is number 3 on our countdown of the most important commanders in 2024. What are your expectations for Terry this season? This is the question we ask each and every day as a part of these previews. 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. What do you expect from Terry McLaurin in 2024? We take your calls on that next. The Commanders... 301-230-0980 is the phone number. What are your expectations for Terry McLaurin in 2024? Our number 3 most important commander for success in this season. 301-230-980 is a phone number. I'm drinking a lot of water, Anthony. Got a little hiccup situation here.
I got you.
Don't love that. Hiccups on the radio are that's a problem, bro. And I think I might have like the real hiccups.
Oh, those are the worst. Have you ever held your breath for like 15 seconds?
I could try it. It probably wouldn't be very good radio. You'd have to narrate or something.
Oh yeah, you're right.
I do have I tried that before? Yes. Basically all the research about potential hiccup remedies is like, this might work for you. It might not. I'm like, great. That sounds terrible. It's just a guessing game. And really all you're doing is you're trying different ones until the hiccups go away naturally. And then you don't know if did the remedy actually work or did they just go away because the time elapsed. I don't know. The hiccup I just had was like a weird triple hiccup. That was like a pop, pop, pop. I didn't like that. That felt terrible.
Yeah, it'd be like that sometimes, man.
Yeah, it's not the life I deserve.
No.
We deserve to hear from you, 301-230-0980. If you have thoughts on Terry McLaurin's 2024 season, what do you expect from... Like, when we ask these questions about, like, the O-lineman, it's a little harder to do. Like, Terry, you can give us a catch number, you can give us a touchdown number, you can give us something less tangible. But go ahead and get a couple... Let's see if we can get a couple calls in here before Mitch Tischler joins us at 5 o'clock. Don't forget Austin Eckler... sorry, not Austin Eckler. Benjamin St. Juste. We're hoping to get Eckler later in camp. But Benjamin St. Juste will join us at 5:30 / I talked to him after camp today, and you'll hear that interview coming up at 5:30. When I think of Terry this season, let me ask you this, Ant. How, like, in order to be like, yeah, he had a great season, how many yards do we think he needs to have? And also, like, what about targets? Like, what actually is the most touchdowns? What is actually the number that matters the most for Terry this year?
I think it should be yards. Yeah, I think it should be yards just because he does get a ton of targets already. But I think the one thing that I'm looking forward to that might affect, the yards, the catches, and things of that nature is his yards of separation when he's running routes. Last year, the Commanders' receiving core, they were, I think, dead last in terms of yards and separation. I know Terry and Jahan Curtis wasn't that bad, but as a unit, they were pretty bad. So I think if he can, create a little bit more separation, I think that's going to allow him to, be able to have more yards after the catch and things of that nature. So I'm more so looking at yards. I know he can catch. I know he can, maul people. But what can you do after you make that catch? And then, can you turn some of those plays into, explosive plays where you score a long touchdown or something?
Yeah, to me, I'm trying to see. I gotta do a deeper dive. Use a different site to see if I can find explosives. But like, explosives would be something that I would track for Terry.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, I always go back a couple years ago, Warren Sharp came on Take Command with us, and he told us like this ridiculous stat, which is basically on drives that have I think it was a 20-plus yard pass or a 15-plus yard run, you score like 55% of the time. Without that, it's 5%. So you're just so much more likely to score on drives where you have an explosive because you take a huge chunk out of the field and you get into field goal range at the very least, almost by like unless you're buried at your own 20-yard line or inside and you have an exactly 20-yard gain. By nature of having an explosive, you're probably going to be in field goal range just based off of that play. Nevertheless, be in the red zone or in the kind of the strike zone, 40 yards and in, as a lot of teams will call it. So there's just such a value of that. And last year, and that is more valuable than like sheer targets because also you can you can stack a lot of targets on quick stuff. But I also think that's important, right? Like, if we want Terry to be this dog after the catch with the ball, like, he got 132 targets last year. I'm not saying he's got to get the 181 that CeeDee Lamb got, but I don't know. Like, Michael Pittman got 156 last year for the Colts in one less game, by the way. I mean, Evan Ingram got 143 in Jacksonville. Olave got 138 in New Orleans. So Terry's like in that neighborhood, but I would like to see him probably closer to the 150 range than I would the 130 range. Unless all of a sudden you got Jahan that's pushing pushing 100 plus, Ertz that's pushing 90 plus. Like, if you have the ball so well distributed and you're humming on offense, that's one thing. But I think you do need to ultimately feed your studs. And I think that, when you look at the best offenses in the league, CeeDee Lamb, Dallas's offense was really good. He led the league in targets. Devontae Adams, okay, bit of a weird situation all last year in Vegas. And he had some games where he did not have many targets, and then he had some games where he had a ton. So, his 175 is a little uneven. But Tyreek, 171. Garrett Wilson, 168. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 164. Diggs in Buffalo had 160. Puka had 160. So, like, yes, Garrett Wilson, not part of a good offense in New York. Devontae was part of a meh offense in Las Vegas. But a lot of the best offenses in the league have guys that just feed their studs. Like, if you have one of these top receivers, you have to get them the ball and let them win. And especially, not because you're paying them, but because you're paying them, right? It's not so much about getting the money's worth, but it's, if you're paying those guys, you're paying them to have that kind of production, and you don't have other guys that are probably capable of it because you're not paying other people at that position. And so I think that Terry, getting 1,200 yards, getting 7-8 touchdowns, like, all that stuff's really important. Touchdowns ultimately are going to help you win the most because, well, that's how you score points. But I think you're right, Ant. Like, explosive plays might be the most telling stat for McLaurin this year.
Yeah, and I'm trying to even, like, think back to – I'm not going to lie, Craig. When I think about Terry explosive, because I think about Justin Jefferson, the CeeDee Lambs, like Tyreek Hill, I can remember, though they're big plays, I can't really remember, like, Terry, taking one to the career for, like, 75 years. The one that comes to mind, I think we were playing the Eagles. He took a slant, like, 75 yards. And that might have been
that stuff in Ohio State, like, regularly.
That might have been his rookie season. So, like, again, when we talk about explosives, it's more so just, quick strike ability. And if, Terry wants to be one of these premier receivers in the NFL, I think we need some of that, just so, he can gain some more notoriety around the NFL. So, yeah.
No, I totally agree. I mean, you look at some of the advanced numbers. I'm trying to see if I can get an explosives. I don't see explosives. That's annoying. But last year, a couple of just key stats, like his average depth of target was the second lowest of his career. It was 11.5, average depth of target versus 14 as a rookie, 13.1, 12.8, and then in 2020 he was only 9.7. But like the difference is in 2020 he had the lowest depth of target, but his highest YAC. He had the most yards after catch per reception of his career because they hit him on some of these slants and things in that year, and you got some of those plays that way. Versus last year, where you're not getting as far down the field with the ball in the air, but he's also not exactly killing it in the yards after catch category because you're not. And some of that is like quarterback accuracy. There's a lot of things that go into it. Does your quarterback set you up to run? But just in general, you look at kind of the conglomeration of all those stats. His receiving success rate. So a successful reception gains at least 40% of yards required on first down, 60% of yards required on second down, and 100% on third or fourth down. He was under 50% last year. So in order to hey, are we getting him the ball in places that allows him to make an impact? Career low in success rate, career low in yards per target. Just a lot of down year type of stuff for Terry. who had been obviously and still is one of the best receivers in football, but just from a consistency standpoint, those middle 3 years of his career were incredible. And he would have 1,000 yards in every year if he didn't get hurt at the end of his rookie year. So we will see if he can bounce back this season. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And our pal Mitch Tischler joins us for Not My Beat next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. You miss any part of the show, make sure you check the podcasts. And, podcasts are pretty great. A lot of good people doing podcasts, including a guy we're going to welcome in right now.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not my beat.
Mitch Tischler is the co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast with JP Finley, and we welcome him in frequently during the football season and football season adjacent times, such as, training camp to talk ball. Mitchell, happy training camp, my friend.
You know what? Today was a great day. It was awesome to see football out there. I love looking at Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it, and my entire feed is lined up with news from around the NFL. It's a great time of the year.
It is, and I do prefer to call it Twitter still. I don't care what that goofball renamed it. It's Twitter. So thanks for asking on the whatever you would like to call it front. I certainly, don't take a lot out of practice one at 75 minutes. They're just getting acclimated again. There's a couple things that I think stand out, though, as you and JP sat down to recap things today. Like, what's the big thing that you take away from practice one, either what you saw or what was said in and around practice?
Yeah, to me, I think the overarching thing, kind of big picture, is just the things that Adam Peters and Dan Quinn are saying are matching what you're seeing on the field. And I think with the Johnny Newton coming back early or quicker than I think we expected when he was put on NFI, I think they were pretty open with, how that rehab was going and what their expectations were for him. I love seeing that. Quinn talks about competition and wanting to get the guys out there. And, I think you see that across the board. There are starters or there are guys that take reps with ones. But then the second time that these guys hit the field, you're seeing different combinations, different groups. And, Marcus Mariota took some number one reps. Jayden Daniels took some others. I just like the idea of this mix and match and, let these guys all kind of get an opportunity to get out there and play with the first group, so to speak, and give them some shine.
Yeah, I think that's great to start camp. I do wonder how that transitions eventually between we have to figure out who we want to start to, okay, we know that, now we got to get them ready for a season. Do you have any sense of kind of what that timeline looks like, or do you have strong feelings on what it should look like and maybe how it even differs from position to position?
I think at this point in camp, it's kind of a good thing. Certainly as you start getting closer to the season, you need to identify those and make those points. And I think kind of we saw that in OTAs through minicamp. At the quarterback position, we saw Marcus Mariota taking all the number one reps and Jayden taking the twos kind of at the start of the offseason program. And as you got to the middle, they started rotating in and splitting it. And then before you got to minicamp, you had Jayden Daniels taking all the first reps. And, whether it's the quarterback, the linebacker, or a wide receiver, I like the fact that they're kind of working these guys in and giving everyone a little bit of an opportunity. But, I think you're going to get to these joint practices that to me are going to be more important than what happens in the games, because you're going to be able to kind of set up the situations that you want. And I think when we get there, you'll get a better feel of who they really feel are their ones, because you're going to want, best on best and give those guys who you expect to start the season a couple more reps in those practices and a little bit more time there. So the first joint practice is August 8th, which is, 15 days away from now. So I imagine, a couple days before that, we'll start getting a feel for where they are.
Mitch Tischler, Beltway Football Podcast, with us here on the Hoffman Show. I know you were asking a couple of guys about staying at Lansdowne. For folks that haven't heard, team is staying together off-site at a hotel at Lansdowne Resort this year, as opposed to just staying at home, even though they're in Ashburn. So it's kind of that mix of going away for training camp, but also still being at home. What did the guys that you asked say about that, and do you like that they're doing that for training camp?
I do like it a lot. I think there's something to be gained from kind of spending time around everybody and kind of being able to put away, your real life and kind of get immersed with the guys. And they'll get a little bit of time off where they can go take care of what they need to take care of and see their families and, all those different things. But I like the idea that, you go to bed at night, you wake up in the morning, you're getting breakfast with these guys, you're riding over to the facility together. Obviously, you have your full day there, and you've heard Dan Quinn talk about the importance of camaraderie and the team gelling and all these different things. And while it's not something that tangible that you can see on the field, I do think it's something that's important for these guys to do. And honestly, as you talk to some of the veterans, some of the guys that have done it elsewhere, talk to Andrew Wiley a little bit, they like the idea that you're going to have an opportunity to get to know your teammates, to get to know your guys, because when they are here during the season, they leave the facility and they have real life things they got to deal with, families and kids and all those different things. And certainly by staying in the hotels, they don't have to worry about being woken up in the middle of the night by a crying baby or whatever else happens in your regular life. And I think it's again just another thing that kind of these guys are practicing what they preach, and that's an important thing as far as it is gaining trust from your team and gaining trust around the plan that you have in place for this football team.
Mitchell, did you catch on Instagram that Zach Ertz was using Julie's luggage as he checked into the hotel yesterday?
I did not catch that. That is quite funny. I imagine that she's probably picked up some nice luggage over the years in her different.
It's not so much that it's like very expensive nice luggage. It's a very distinct Team USA, like U.S. Women's National Team bag that I know from unloading it off of a truck in Florida from, I think, Andy Sullivan, but it might have been Rose Lavelle when I worked for the Spirit back in the day. I was like, I know that suitcase. That is not a Zach Ertz original, but that's fine. If my wife played for the U.S. Women's National Team and had cool luggage, I think I would steal it for my football camp.
That's a pretty cool piece of memorabilia. Not everybody has that, and certainly if you're walking into a football facility, that's going to stand out because there aren't a whole lot of guys that have that opportunity.
No, I did, by the way, talk to Benjamin St. Juste, though, about his sister-in-law, Anna Hall, who will be competing in Paris. And I will tell the audience, and you, Mitchell, if you would like to listen, that interview is coming up at 5:30, and there was some very funny moments in talking about that, as well as the football with BSJ. The one thing that I took away from the football side of the chat with BSJ that I thought was interesting, and I'm curious if you have talked to any players about this, it's certainly something I'm going to follow up on in the next couple of practices and the weeks ahead, is some of the coaching differences in how they're able to identify certain things now, looking back with the perspective of being coached through the spring by the new staff of what may have been missing in the past. Have you had any interesting conversations along those lines, whether it was today with guys or throughout the spring, thinking back on it?
Absolutely. I mean, I think to me that's the biggest difference between this coaching staff. And this is the time of year that you should feel confident that they're going to get the better coaching, the more hands-on coaching. But I expect this team as a whole to be much better prepared because I think across the board you have a lot of upgrades in the coaching department. Guys who have just kind of been there and done that before, and they've worked in different cities and different teams and different players and different roles, and they're able to bring all that experience here. And I think the two places that I expect the most is the secondary and the offensive line, which were the two biggest holes last year. I mean, the fact that last year we saw guys running wide open down the field as often as they did, there's a portion of that comes from, talent and ability, but that doesn't happen as consistently as it does if there isn't miscommunication along the way. And I know talking to some guys who maybe didn't play in the secondary, they talked about being on the practice field and being told one thing, going to the meeting room and being told something slightly different, and then on game days on the sideline being told a third thing. And it creates a situation where you don't have guys playing freely and fast. You have guys who are out there thinking and trying to figure out where they're supposed to be or what's being asked of them. And, I think once we get to kind of games, I think you're just going to see overall just a more prepared football team. And to me, that's a huge upgrade over last year where and years past, even before Ron, where we saw, these Commanders, Washington football Redskins teams coming out, unprepared and being beat right in the first quarter and playing from behind. So I'm excited about what that's going to look like. And I do think secondary and O-line are two places that they'll see a big upgrade there.
Yeah, no doubt about it. There's only 5 fan practices this year. That to me is curious. I don't think it's wrong. I don't know if it's right. Just what do you make of the difference in how the fan access is in year 1 of Quinn, year 2 of Harris versus kind of this big welcome home party that they in some ways felt like they had to have last year with Josh coming in and Snyder exiting?
I think there's a good balance between opening training camp to fans and, having some private practices where you can really do what you want. Because when the fans are there, as much as you want to think that it's, cool with the noise and everyone cheering, it is a little bit of a distraction. You do have guys that might not be your starters, the guys who are, trying to make a name for themselves, try and do a little too much during those practices and, show off for the fans. And then the second part of it is just, you don't want to put too much information out there. And I think that, there's rules and there's understanding amongst the media and the team in terms of, what you're going to talk about and how you're going to talk about it. And sometimes when you have fan groups out there, you have groups taking pictures and videos that, the team might not want out there. And so I think there's a delicate balance, but I do think it makes those fan days like extra special. I think it makes people more excited on those days that they're there. And to me, it's a really cool experience that they've set up there with, the stands and all that. That might be a normal thing across the NFL at a lot of different training camps, but it's pretty new for the Commanders. And so I do like the idea of it. And I think that I guess Sunday, the 29th, I think, is the first day they're out there. It's going to be a lot of fun seeing everybody out there and kind of feeling their energy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Players get a little extra juice. It's also a way, I think, to spruce up camp. Like, camp gets so monotonous. And if all of a sudden you've been going through 2-3 days of no fans and just hard work, and all of a sudden fans are out there, it's a good way to mix things up. Last thing for you, Mitch, is Mitch Tischler is with us, of course, Beltway Football Podcast. You can listen to him and JP recapping training camp daily, right? You guys are doing a pod every day during camp?
We do daily pods. We're on day number 2 here. We did one yesterday with Dan Quinn and Adam Peters,
nice.
And there's a lot more coming.
So last question for you. Is there a sleeper, a guy that you're watching throughout this camp that you think is maybe not on people's radars, but is got or has a really good chance to make this roster?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, I think when I think sleeper, I think a player that maybe you don't expect to make a huge impact because you don't really know exactly what they have. Today, I was watching some of the D-line, and I was super impressed with Dante Fowler. He was so quick out there, and he's a guy who's a roster lock, but I think fans might not kind of know what to expect from him. He was a high draft pick and didn't kind of pan out exactly as great as folks thought. But I think that there needs to be an understanding about this group of defensive ends between Dorrance Armstrong, him, and Cleveland Farrell. I think your floor is a little bit higher than maybe the Chase Young, Montez Sweat group, but particular to Dante Fowler, he just looked so quick out there. He was quick off the line. He did a really good job of bending, getting around the tackles. And then mostly what I liked was he was working kind of his speed on the outside. And as practice continued, he started working on his counters to that. He started working on, the fake rush up the outside, dip inside, a spin move, kind of a couple different things. And, I think as we think back to some of the Montez Sweat and Chase Young days, those guys got super into, their one main move, and they didn't do a great job of working some of those counters. And first day of camp, to have a veteran guy like that go out there and already start working those things, I think just shows kind of, the experience that he has and the understanding of how to win one-on-one matchups in the NFL. I think he's going to be a nice piece on pass obvious downs to get in there and get after the quarterback.
No, I think that's a great pick. And he wears number 6. A DN wearing number 6, he's got to be good. Those are the rules. You can't wear a single digit and be bad.
I love it. My favorite thing is when interior D lineman wears 0.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Yeah, no, that's good stuff. And unfortunately, we don't have that on this team yet. But who knows? In the future, perhaps a number 0 will emerge. Mitch Tischler, listen to him with JP Finley daily on the Beltway Football Podcast all throughout training camp, and I'm sure you'll hear him back here on the show. Great to see you today, sir. Look forward to watching some of practice with you tomorrow, and I'll see you then.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, bud.
Yeah, always our pleasure. That's Mitch Tischler, everybody, with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back, it was not just the first day of training camp. It was a first for the Hoffman Show today as well. Anthony and I had a small adventure, and then we will share our interview with Benjamin St. Juste with you at 5:30. The adventure, though, next on the Team 980.
It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and always live on the free Odyssey app. And coming up in 9 minutes, my chat after practice today with Benjamin St. Juste, the Commander's Corner. I kid you not, like, I picked BSJ for the first day of camp in part because you want to get someone who's going to be excited to talk. That obviously some guys that are going to do these giant media scrums are going to get hounded. You're not going to actually get the interview you want, all that kind of stuff. So I had to pick somewhere on the depth chart that was both interesting and also feasible. But I talked to Benjamin last year during training camp, and it was a really enjoyable interview. And I think he's honest. I think he's a good talker. I think he's thoughtful, which, if I could get one thing out of an interview with an athlete, it's, are they thoughtful? Because are they actually trying to answer the question? Have they thought about some of the things that you're asking them about because they're important to them? And BSJ absolutely is that. And boy, did he pay off. And it was funny. And we can take folks behind the scenes for a quick second before we take them on our little adventure that we went on today. Benjamin passed us because he wanted to go see his wife and child, which is reasonable. And then as he was coming back, we were like, hey, can we grab you? He's like, I gotta go catch balls. I'll come back. And he didn't say it like, hey, don't worry, I'll come back. He was like, I'll come back. And I was like, I hope I didn't catch him in a bad mood. Because he and everyone else is human. Some days you get guys and they're great. Some days you catch them in a bad mood and they want anything else but to be interviewed. And that's okay. That's allowed. They're pros, and you hope that they put on a good face. But when BSJ came in, he instantly just gave his whole body language was like, okay, I'm done working now. I am all in. Let's talk. And we had an awesome 8-minute chat, and you'll hear it coming up at 5:30. But Anthony, practice only went about 75 minutes today. And so afterwards, we talked to BSJ. We went up to John Allen's press conference, and we kind of looked at each other and went, what do we do now? We had a meeting with the boss at 2, just regular old bi-weekly meeting at 2:15. And we're like, well, I guess I'm going to go work out. And you're like, I'm going to go work out. And I was like, well, what are you doing? You're like, I'm going to do some back stuff and do some biceps. And I was like, want to go together? Want to be gym buddies? And Anthony, we went to the gym. It's the first time we've ever worked out together in 2+ years of doing the show.
I know. First time we've ever
Well, I guess actually, hold on. Now that I think of it, it's the second time we've ever worked out together.
Oh, the second.
You would rather forget the first one.
Yeah, the first one
You
was
came
brutal.
to Elevate and you almost died.
Yeah, it was bright and early.
class.
Yeah, bright and early. And
Anthony didn't eat anything.
Nope.
Rookie mistake.
Yeah. But this time was, a lot better. The workout wasn't that long, 45 minutes to an hour. We got in.
More
got
your
out.
speed.
Yep.
Just some lifting.
Yep. And all in all, good. Also, shout out to Vita because that was my first time there as well.
Yeah. You came to, I got you a little guest pass action to the gym that I go to.
Yep.
Yeah. It was nice. I mean, you work out at Prep, so that's. I'm sure you guys have a nice gym up there.
Yeah,
and
but
you go to One Life sometimes too.
I usually go to One Life, but
which is nice. I used to work for One Life, fine company.
I love One Life.
Yeah, the one you go to is also mad nice.
Yeah. But I've also, I've been to Goals. I've been to Planet Fitness. I've been to, what's the other one?
There's lots of them.
Yeah. Vita's pretty good.
Yeah, I got to admit, though, I'm a little upset with you because I was like, grab your bag so we can, change and whatever after. And you're like, no, I'm good. And it was like, okay. Because, the part of the perks of Vita are, the showers and stuff are really nice.
Yeah.
But we had to come back because all your stuff was here. So I just had to shower. And not that our office gym is, terrible, but I didn't get to use the luxury salon products.
Oh, you wanted the product.
Come on.
I didn't know I was working out today, so I didn't even have all of the stuff that I should have had.
Yeah.
But now I know. Well, I don't know actually. We just were
you never
surprised
went in
that
the
we
locker
were going to have a 75-minute practice. So.
I mean, there's always tomorrow.
Yeah, there's that too.
You want to go? You want to run tomorrow with me?
What's tomorrow? Thursday?
Yeah.
Tomorrow's leg day. So yes, I can get some cardio in.
No, you don't want to run with me tomorrow and then do legs. That's a bad. I got to run for a decent amount of time tomorrow.
How long is a decent amount of time?
I'll probably run for 40 minutes tomorrow.
40 minutes, sir.
30 to 40. I'm
40
hoping to do it outside.
minutes?
What's the weather like tomorrow?
Probably gonna be raining. It's been raining every day. It looks like it's about to rain now.
It's been looking like it's about to rain all day. Yeah, it is supposed to rain tomorrow. Shoot. but not till 3 o'clock, meaning it's going to be humid as hell.
Yep.
Honestly, though, like if I can get a 1 o'clock, 83 degrees and humid run in, it's not going to feel good. I'm going to sweat my brains out. But for heat adaptation, that's a good run. That's like a great training run. Run easy.
Are you running for time or are you running
I'll run for
a
time.
distance?
I'll run for time tomorrow.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
because I don't know how slow I'll need to go to keep my heart rate under control because it's going to be that humid out. And like I let my heart rate run a little bit higher because of the heat. Like there's only you can go walking in 80-degree humidity and you'll start sweating and your heart rate will be in zone 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, we we'll control for the factors tomorrow. It'll be all right. Get what we need to do done. I think tomorrow's practice will be a little bit longer, but
I hope so.
not crazy.
Yeah.
All right. Up next here on the Hoffman Show, people who get paid to work out, not Anthony and I just going on a little adventure. By the way, how'd you think I did on that workout?
Oh, you were killing it.
Okay.
I think you have a little bit more muscle endurance than I do.
Yeah.
Because towards the end,
You were fading a little bit. Although you did crush that last set of pull-ups.
yeah, I mean, I like things like body weight, like push-ups, pull-ups, dips.
Yeah.
Unweighted dips. I can do a lot of body weight, but it's also because I don't weigh that much. I weigh like 165.
Oh, yeah. If I weighed 165 pounds. God, if there was a way that I should have done that. I should have gone on the assisted pull-up machine and subtracted, 20 pounds from my body weight and seen how many I could do.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, there also was a little bit of the circuit before I added a little weight behind your back.
Yeah.
On my rounds.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. It was fine. You did a good job.
I did what needed to be
did
done.
a good job.
Yes.
All right, when we get back, Benjamin St. Juste with us here on the Hoffman Show. Day one of Commanders training camp is in the books. Doesn't stop our previews. Coming up at 6 o'clock, we continue previewing the team position group by position group with a look at the safeties, one of the most dynamic groups on the roster. Also, a ton of NFL news and notes. Trent Williams not reporting, CeeDee Lamb not reporting to camp. We'll get you the latest lists and some analysis of it all coming up at 5:45. But right now, my chat one-on-one after training camp today with Commanders cornerback Benjamin St. Juste.
First of all, before we can get to camp, how was your summer? I know you had a bit of a whirlwind tour. Went on some vacation, became a dad. So pretty nice offseason?
It was a great offseason. Obviously, main highlight of that is becoming a dad. Now I got a new fan that comes see me play this season. A lot more motivation. And it feels great to live for something bigger than just myself, and have someone looking up to me consistently. So it's going to be a great season.
I actually talked about this with Zach yesterday about how when he became a dad, and obviously for him it was later in his career, how it changed who he was and kind of that idea of purpose. Like, have you already noticed that even though your child is so young and you're still so young in your career?
I feel like I noticed it instantly as soon as she came out the womb. Honestly, it was like, wow, I created this. It was kind of like a wave of responsibility, but at the same time a wave of great energy, like I said, to live something bigger than myself. Now every day, it doesn't matter I feel good, I feel bad, I'm motivated, I'm not motivated, or whatever. I have somebody that depends on me. I have a family, and all those values and the discipline translate to the football field. When I come out here, it's not just for me, it's for the team, it's for my family. And I think that's what makes great players even better players. It's when they start playing for something bigger than just themselves.
Benjamin St. Juste with us here on the Hoffman Show. Obviously, this knew everything, staff-wise, football-wise. What has been the biggest difference that you've seen, or some of the most, I'm not going to say biggest, what's the most important difference you've seen in how you guys went about the spring and now you're starting camp compared to the previous couple years?
How we compete for everything, honestly. It's crazy. The first week that Coach Quinn came here, it was all about competing. It was competing in the weight room, competing in drills, competing in the class, in the mean room. Who can learn the fastest? Who knows all the plays already? That was just one weekend. So when we go out to the field, there's no hierarchy of who should go out there and politics of this player should play. Not everybody's going to compete. Everybody's going to get a fair chance, and the best players are going to play. And I think that's what makes great teams, is because they give everybody a chance to go out there and show how much you want to make this team, how much you want to impact this team. It's not we're going to put this player here just because of this, that, and the third. Everybody's competing for a spot, and I love it. It pushed me to be a better player, and that's what I'm here for.
So when we talk about you as a player, I think everyone knows you have the great size, you have great length, you have all these things that are prototypical for a great corner. The ball production's been the big question. Joey Jr., DQ, they're known for getting ball production out of their DBs. What are some of the things that you've learned that you think can help you in that area and solidify your spot as the starting corner on this team?
Honestly, it's just being comfortable in the concept and the plays that he puts out there. He makes us feel very comfortable on what we can attack, what we don't need to. We can't cover everything. I think that's the main thing that he brought to the table. It's you can't cover everything, but we're going to give you the best plays, the best concept to go out there and eat, So if I tell you to jump this post because that's what he's going to throw when we play this coverage, jump the post, don't jump the out, So he makes it real simple that there's going to be some flaws in the coverages, and that's okay. But the plays where you should be making a play, go out there and be comfortable and make it, It's not a thing of cover this route and cover this route, and now we end up playing scared and not making any plays. He's going to give you the liberty of go out there and make this play because that's how I designed it.
It's something we heard last year is that there was a lot of thinking going on the back end, and maybe that caused some of the confusion, some of the busts, etc. Is that something you knew at the time and didn't quite have the tools to equip, that when Joe gets in here and you're oh, that's what it is? Did you know it last year, or when he started teaching that way and when the group that's here started teaching that way, was it clarifying in some ways of kind of what needed to change to get better production?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I feel like I didn't have enough experience in this league to kind of know that that's what was happening. I couldn't understand why I was not feeling as comfortable to make certain plays. And, I'm just the type player that coach tells me to do something, I do it. I don't have the 6-7 years of experience of maybe some other players that realize maybe I'm gonna just play it this way because this doesn't make any sense. And I feel like towards the end of the year, I kind of realized that like there was a lot of plays that were missed, that were left behind because of a lot of confusion. Times where we'd be like, hey, wait, where's my safety, or where's this, and like or plays that were just not explained and stuff like that. And I feel like they recognized that off the rip. They was like, look, we're gonna make it real simple. When I tell you to do this and this play, that's what you're gonna do. And if it mess up and then the guy catches the ball, and that's on me. But as a player, like, you feel comfortable to go out there and make the plays that need to be made, and your coach is gonna say, like, if he catches, let's say, this out route right here, that's on me. But last year we kind of had to like figure out that by ourselves. Like, oh, okay, he caught this. Like, was that the right play? Was that not? Now we have it's kind of like straight to the point. Like, that's black and white. That's how he told us to play it.
Benjamin St. Juste with us here on the Hoffman Show. Any of the vets that have really come in, whether it's Chin, obviously Bobby Wagner is the name that comes up a lot, but how have some of the newer faces, newer voices that do have that experience helped you guys? Because the back end's still fairly young, but you have new guys all around. I know there's a lot of communication, or there's a lot of team building stuff where there's a lot of cross-pollination and position groups. Maybe even it's an offensive guy like a Zach Ertz that comes in, tells you something. Who are some of the vets that have really helped you throughout the spring and as you get started here in the fall?
For me, honestly, all the players that you mentioned are definitely like pouring a lot into the team with their knowledge and information that they acquired throughout their career. But for me, it's really the coaches, Coach Simmons, Coach Tommy Donatel, Coach Joe Witt. Like, those coaches, they've coached at the highest level with the highest players, some gold jackets, a lot of gold jackets in their resume. So that shows. That's where I'm all ears. I'm listening, and they know what's works best for me. Might not work best for maybe Emmanuel. Might not work as best for Michael Davis or any other corner. Like, they have a specific plan on how they want you to play because they saw so many different DBs, in their career. So, and that's what I love. Someone that can cater a plan to me to work on my weaknesses and also work off my strengths. And so I learned a lot from my coaches.
All right, we started with family. I want to end with family because I'm disappearing in the back end of camp because I'm going to watch in Paris at the Olympics. Your sister-in-law, Anna Hall, is going to compete in the heptathlon. What's it been like to watch her journey coming back from injury, the way she's fought, and having that other professional athlete in the family to make? And I don't know if heptathlon and football are very, very different, but some of the things she's training, her explosiveness, all that kind of stuff. I'm sure there's times you get to exchange notes, but just to watch the grit that she showed to come back, what's it been like for you to have a front row seat to that?
Honestly, every time I go see her, it just motivates me. I just get hit with a wave of like, oh man, I'm finna go train. I'm about to go kill it this year. Just cause watch, it's like you said, she's a iron woman. She plays. She kind of like a Swiss Army knife, like a tight end. We would say here, she do everything, like run, jump, throw, like you name it. Like that's probably the hardest, events that you can do, and. Man, she just got that dog in her, honestly. Like, literally, she got a dog in her, like, to go out there and self-motivate herself. I always tell people, like, track and field is a man, woman, and arena type sport. You can't look to your left and your right to trying to get some help. It's you versus you. And for her to be so young, last time she went to Olympic trials at 17 and being a fan favorite and breaking her ankle and having to wait another 4 years and still, like, staying on top of her game, winning bronze for the U.S., winning silver last year. And now this year, go out there and win gold. So for me, it's just extra motivation. Someone at the top of their game doing their thing. I'm like, oh man, I'm trying to just meet you up there. Trying to meet you at the top of the game.
Yeah, for sure. Last thing, of the events that she competes in, which one would you have the best chance competing against her in, and which one would be the absolute worst for you?
Best one, I would probably say maybe a 200. Anything. I
feel like one of the sprints is the obvious right answer.
Maybe with a little bit of technique, like the high jump, I could be decent. But a 200, anything over 200, she's whooping my butt. But I would say, the 200. But honestly, I'm just saying that because you asked me, she would whoop me at every event.
Humility is very important. Benjamin St. Juste, appreciate you, sir.
All right, Benjamin St. Juste, nice enough to take some time after practice today to sit down with me, answer my serious questions and my silly questions. And again, his sister-in-law, Anna Hall, the favorite for gold in Paris. It's going to be very fun to watch her compete. The best American heptathlete has battled back from injuries both this year and some longer-term stuff. So it'll be very, very cool to watch her go and then to see what BSJ can do under this new coaching staff this year. And I think that, one thing that I'm really looking forward to talking to a lot of players about is the way this staff coaches, and especially guys that have been around. Like, I want to ask Terry and Jahan. I was bummed that I missed Terry's presser today, so I didn't get to ask him, but I think we'll get Jahan over the next couple of days. like, how does Bobby Ingram's coaching different as someone who was here last year, but now has a different directive, has a different head coach? Like, that's fascinating to me. But also for Benjamin last year to be that lost and to not have the answers and not have coaches that can give him the answers. And now to look back with clarity and be like, oh, that's the answer. That is how you unlock a new level of player. And that is why I have hope for so many guys on this roster who I think underperformed their actual abilities last year and in the previous 4 years, as many of them arrived here and tried to start their careers on the right foot. When we get back, a lot of NFL news, a lot of holdouts. Luckily, none of it here in Washington, but we'll get you the details, get you all caught up and everything around the NFL next. Coming up at 6 o'clock, we will dive into the safety position for Washington. One of the most interesting position groups on the team. Just how many starters are there? How many guys make the roster? Who are some of the key coaches that affect them? We'll get into our burning 6 questions, our pick 6 at 6, coming up at, 6, because that's why it's the pick 6 at 6. Got that, Anthony?
I think so.
Okay. That's good because we're many days into this now, and you do produce the show, which does seem relevant.
Yes.
Okay. Top NFL storylines, non-Commanders version, which of course does, Anthony, by law, require the proper music.
Ooh, yeah.
All right then. Let's start off with this one just because I think it's interesting. Then we'll get into some of the stuff that maybe is more important. Kyle Shanahan revealed on the TK Show podcast with Tim Kawakami from The Athletic that he offered Bill Belichick a job in the offseason. Quote, I did. I threw it out to him. He loves football so much that you never know what I can't believe that he's not a head coach of a team right now. I know what I would do if I was an owner, so that shocks me. And the last thing you want to do is insult someone like Bill Belichick. But I know he just loves ball in its simplest form, so I threw it all out to him, whatever he wanted to do. That apparently included the team's defensive coordinator position. Shanahan said a job that ultimately was filled when they promoted from within. Belichick politely and appreciatively turned down the Falcons, turned down the 49ers. Of course, they famously did battle in the Super Bowl where Dan Quinn and Kyle lost after being up 28-3. And, Belichick he's Belichick. So Kyle Shanahan was like, hey, dude, you want to come work for me? That would have been amazing.
That would have been scary.
Scary. Kyle, honestly, props to Kyle. I'm sure Kyle wasn't the only one. I'd kind of be almost surprised if Sean didn't do the same thing, if Kevin didn't give Belichick a call. If I think Kyle's got the standing to maybe do that a little bit more than some of the other guys. But a lot of coaches around the league, especially, I guess Kevin didn't need a DC because they had a good year last year with Flores. But if you needed a DC this offseason, why wouldn't you call? Hey, man, I know you probably want a head coaching job. I know you're you, but I also know you love ball. I would love to have you on staff, make you the assistant head coach. We'll make you we'll pay you whatever if our owner's on board. But why wouldn't you? And so props to Kyle for doing it. For being I know this could insult Bill Belichick because I'm offering a coordinator spot, but I can't offer him anything better, so I'm going to do it.
Yeah, I just look at the job he did last year with the team he had and the fact, the Patriots were able to limit so many teams last year.
They had a top 10 defense last year.
And they were on the field all the time as well.
Yeah.
That's the even crazier stat.
Some of the advanced stat was their top 5 defense last year. It's been interesting listening to some of these national preview podcasts, and I'm very low on the Patriots in part because I think that they are going to be a disaster. I think structurally they are a disaster. I think they have a bad offensive line. I do not trust their coaching staff. I know some people trust them a little bit more. That's fine. But there's a lot of folks that are I know New England's bad on offense, but Jacoby's competent, and their defense is going to be nasty because they were top 10 last year without Matthew Judon for most of the year and without Christian Gonzalez for most of the year.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. Who knows? We'll see. Belichick obviously put that all together and coached it up quite well. But Belichick on the sideline hanging out with his not old enough girlfriend. Legally, she's old enough, but, bro. Could you imagine? I heard this the other day. Sorry, I don't want to get too sidetracked, but I kind of do. There was some, dad watching Belichick win his first Super Bowls with the Patriots that had a daughter 2 years later that's dating Bill Belichick right now.
Yeah, I just looked her up.
You didn't know that he was dating a 22-year-old or something like that?
No.
Yeah.
It's a little concerning.
Yeah, he's in his 70s.
Yeah. It's very concerning. Actually.
He and Bob Kraft, 2 peas in a pod.
Oh my god.
That's not even a joke about the the salacious stuff with Kraft. He's also dating a much, much younger woman.
Yeah.
I
don't get it.
Hey, if everyone's happy, who am I to judge?
Yep.
Who am I to judge? The answer is nobody. When Kyle got done asking Bill Belichick if he wanted to be the defensive coordinator, then had to get back to the reality that he's got a lot of players that do not like their contracts. Brandon Ayuk today, no practice. John Lynch reiterating we are absolutely keeping Brandon Ayuk. Trent Williams also sitting out of training camp, not reporting to camp as he wants a new deal. He is, I think, 37. Still playing as well as any offensive tackle in the league. He's got money left on his deal. I don't know the full details of the guarantees off the top of my head, but I would imagine if you could guarantee him a little bit more money at his age, then that probably is enough to get Trent back. I also wouldn't surprise me if Trent just doesn't want to go through training camp. He's like, I'm Trent Williams. I don't need to go to training camp. I don't want to do training camp. I've made a lot of money. I'll pay the fines. I just don't want to do training camp. That wouldn't surprise me either.
He's due a lot of money, Craig. He's set to make 20 this year, 22.5 next year, and 32.2 in 2026. And he wants a new contract. He is 36 years of age. Or no. He just wants a raise, right?
I'm sure he wants a raise. I'm sure he wants more money right now because that contract
was 6 years when he signed it.
Right, which means when you look at the top guys at that position, a base salary of, 20 is not a lot. And the guaranteed money going forward is status. Come on, give me the numbers. Spotrac. Behave yourself. This site is freaking
2024 guaranteed?
Yeah, 20. What's 2025 guaranteed?
2025.
That's right. Okay, here we go. I'm going to over the cap. Guaranteed salary 0, 0, 0 moving forward.
Oh, that's why. Okay.
So it's in part he is no longer the highest paid tackle in football, and I would assume he wants to be the highest paid tackle in football. Also, he has no guaranteed money moving forward, and thus he would probably like that. He's been surpassed by Andrew Thomas and surpassed by by Laramie Tunsil in terms of APY, which is the number that most people care about. Yeah. But also average guarantees per year. He's half of those other guys. So that's why Trent wants a new contract. CeeDee Lamb also not reporting in Dallas. His contract situation, as well as Dak Prescott's, very, very tenuous. And it's the kind of thing, if they would just be smart about contracts in Dallas and get in front of stuff, how good could they be? Like Will McClay, who does their draft stuff, saves their ass by just drafting good players every single year. Their coaches must do a really good job. Which, by the way, their former defensive coordinator, I don't know if you heard, he's the head coach here now. So hopefully that can translate. Brought some staff with him in the whole thing. But I just don't get what Dallas is doing. I think that's the thing that's so frustrating about the Cowboys is, do we talk about the Cowboys too much because they're the Cowboys? And do national shows do it? Yeah, of course. But also, they're so interesting to talk about because what are they doing? Trying to figure that out is worth airtime exploring because it doesn't seem like there's actually a good answer.
Yeah, I don't understand what they're doing, but I would ask you this question. So you have CD, you have Dak, you have Michael Parsons. Soon, like a year or two removed from like right now. Who would you rather have under contract of those three players? If you had to pick one. I mean, I don't know how they're going to do. Maybe they get away with two, but I don't think they get all three under contract.
I mean, it feels like the right answer is Prescott and Parsons.
Okay.
Because quarterback and getting after the quarterback are maybe the two most important things in the sport. But, like, CeeDee Lamb is the center of everything they do offensively.
Man.
He led the NFL in targets last year. He had 180 targets. So you got to figure out a way to get all three. And you're going to have to be really, really smart at other positions. And you're going to have to be really frugal at other positions. Or you're going to have to structure the contracts in a way that the money hits at different times. Because this is why you get ahead of it, though, right? It's like if they had done Prescott 2 years ago or last year, well, then you could have some of the bigger money hitting now for him. You could have a cheap year of Lamb this year because you zero out almost, or you $1 million base salary plus the prorated signing bonus, and players go for that because they get all the signing bonus money up front in cash, and it's the cap number that's spread out. And then next year you do the same thing for Micah, and now you've spread them out. The problem is now you have to do them all at the same time. And by the way, by next year, if Dak isn't playing well, you can move on potentially because you signed him last year and you would have gotten 2 years out of it. Or you're trying to figure out what you're doing with him and you can restructure again. Like, they've just put themselves in a bind where they have to do it all at once. And that's the problem, is they didn't spread it out. You spread it out, you're fine. You can always move cap around in the NFL. You just can't necessarily do things all at once. And they've put themselves in position to do at least 2 of these guys at once with Dak and CD, and then try to have the big money hit next year when they're going to try to sign Micah. It's stupid.
I love to see it.
Fair enough. All right, when we get back, the safety position, one of the most fascinating on the roster for the Washington Commanders. We'll preview it next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6:30, hear from Terry McLaurin. Yeah, Terry was at the podium today. We will get you some of the best of what he had to say. On day one of Commanders training camp, things are open for business. Anthony and I will be back out there tomorrow. We'll chat with another player after. We'll take in an observations. Logan already told me, Anthony, that he's watching practice with me tomorrow. So my observations are going to be smart. What goes into this notebook tomorrow, better than what went in today.
That's good stuff then.
Just kidding. I know everything. Paulson. Just there for decoration. Anthony, I think we should do the pick six now.
The 6 biggest Commander storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the Pick 6 at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
Every single day at 6 o'clock, we are previewing the Washington Commanders 2024 season, one position group at a time. We are running out of position groups, but we are not out of them yet. Today, we look at the safety position, and it is fascinating. There are so many different roles. When Joe Witt Jr. talks about having 18 starters on defense, it's because he's got like 5 different safeties that he is trying to fill. And so let's get to know them. Let's get to know the coaches. Let's get to know who the best players are, the guys who have the wild card ability to change the season, and then ultimately make a prediction about who's on the roster, pick six style, starting with
Number 1.
Number 1 is who are the dudes? Jeremy Reeves, of course, 6th year out of South Alabama. The Pro Bowler on special teams a couple of years ago returns. I think he's in a fight for a roster spot. I do think his special teams ability and his leadership and all of that probably speaks really well. They brought him back coming off the injury last year. So I do think Revo's probably safe, but it is the kind of thing that if another younger player emerges and with special teams changing and the kickoff return coming more important, if they like someone else, it's going to be interesting as Jeremy Reeves is probably 5th or 6th on the safety depth chart. I ultimately think I will have him on the team, but let's get to know everybody else who's in contention as well. Tyler Owens, big freaking dude. 6'2", 215, rookie out of Texas Tech. A young drafted free agent, number 40 if you're out there. He's the big guy, huge dude wearing 40. He's an interesting guy, and I think very interesting as a team's prospect as well. Kind of one of these big hybrid safeties, the exact body type that Dan Quinn likes to have around. Ben Nickel, who is a safety, not a corner, even though his name is Nickel. He's another UDFA in camp. Dominique Hampton, the late-round pick out of Washington, 6'3", 220. He's going to have a starting role on this team. The question is, how big is that role going to be? Derek Forrest returns for his 4th year, 22, of course, in your hearts, a 25-year-old out of Cincinnati. I should say number 22 in your programs, number 1 in your hearts. Forrest, starter last year, I think will be the 3rd safety this year and will play a lot, but very interesting, and his role might change compared to what he's done in the past. The new guy, Jeremy Chin, 5th year, 6'3", 220. He wears number 11. Ben Standing with just an outstanding observation today. How a number looks with a name on the back, like some names and numbers just look really good together. That 11 Chin, that is an excellent combo. Great. That's why you pay Ben Standing the big bucks for observations like that. But this dude is a hybrid player, play a ton in the box. He's probably at his best in the box, but I think he's going to be one of your 2 starting safeties. Percy Butler, another wild card, different body type. You know, we saw a lot of 6'2", 6'3", 215, 220. Percy Butler, 6 foot 190. Big, long, rangy. So his size is length, not girth. But a different kind of body type. Someone who I think has a big role on this team, playing over the top, getting into some single high looks where you trust him to cover the middle of the field. So in certain situations, he becomes really valuable. And that is the list. Outside of one guy that I didn't mention, and that's Quan Martin, which I think is interesting because I'm reading this directly off of the Commanders website. They have Quan Martin listed as a cornerback. Or actually, sorry, they have him listed as a DB. So they are acknowledging Quan Martin is going to be all over the place. So we'll circle back to that in just a moment because he is the answer to one of our other questions. But that's the list of players. Now let's get to the guys who are coaching them.
Number 2.
Won't spend as much time on this because it's the same exact group as we talked about with corners earlier in the week. You're talking about Tommy Donatel, you're talking about Willie Gay, and of course you're talking about Joe Witt Jr. But one thing that if you missed our interview with Benjamin St. Juste, that I think is really interesting that also works in conjunction with the safeties, not just the corners, but St. Juste, obviously the corner, told us this, is they are being very clear with what roles and responsibilities are within this team. And I've already talked about there's going to be a lot of different ones, and I will briefly, on a high level, touch on some of them as we go here. But on a very simplistic level, it is going to be a lot clearer this year who is responsible for certain areas of the field. And there's just going to be times where you acknowledge every defense has its weakness, and sometimes it's the sideline, sometimes it's the middle of the field, sometimes it's deep, sometimes it's short. And Juice told us, he's like, there are certain coverages where we know we have to cover this thing, and if this other thing gets completed on us, that's not our responsibility. And sometimes it's not my responsibility because it was a safeties, and other times it's just that's the weakness in the coverage, and we gave up the thing we want, and the coach said, hey, that's on me, don't worry about it, next snap, and it keeps players' confidence high. That's also something that's applicable to the safeties, and so from a coaching standpoint, I think it's better to mention that versus going over bios and who these guys are. Donatel, longtime coach, Willie Gay, longtime veteran in the NFL. Witt's been coaching forever. But what they're going to do this year is try to eliminate so many of those busts. And I was listening actually earlier today, speaking of coaches, to Robert May's interview with Sean McVay. And Robert from the Athletic Football Show asked him, what do you think has changed the most over the last 5 years of offense and defense in the NFL? And Sean goes, I think we've all realized that explosives are the most important thing. That if we can get them as an offense and prevent them as a defense, then we're going to be successful. And the easiest way to give up explosives is to bust. And we saw that time and time again last year with these coverage busts. And I have a lot of faith in this coaching staff to put many of the same players, the Percy Butlers, the Derek Forrests, the Quan Martins, in position to succeed. Where last year they were asked to do too much. They were very confused because they were given confusing instructions. They didn't play with confidence. They didn't play with speed. They didn't play with intention. They didn't play with discipline because they couldn't. There was nothing to be disciplined to. And they gave up a bunch of the things that hurts the most, those explosive plays. That's where the coaching comes in for the Commanders on the back end, and especially for the safety position in 2024.
Number 3.
Number 3 is who's the best player in the group. I think the best player in the group, well, I'll give two answers. I think the best player in the group is probably Jeremy Chin. I think Chin is a very, very special player who we remember finished second to Chase Young in 2020 Rookie of the Year voting defensively. He is versatile. He tackles really well. He has got a ton of speed. He's not a guy that with that speed you necessarily want playing in the post, but he can play back there, especially if he's playing, kind of a dual post, that too high stuff where he's only got to cover half the field versus being responsible for, technically a middle third, or if it cover one player, the entire back end, clean up everything. But even in that cover 3 where you have a deep third, that middle third is a lot bigger than the side thirds, if you will. And so Chin probably comes in having the best experience. If he's healthy, missile to the football, will make plays, get his hands on balls for deflections, make plays in the backfield in the run game. But I think the best case scenario for this team is Quan Martin winds up being the best DB on this team and the best, obviously, player in this position group. He has got even more versatility than Chin. I don't think he's going to be quite as good in the box because Chin is built a little bit more like a linebacker, but Quan will play a good bit in the box. He's an outstanding blitzer. He can play that Buffalo nickel spot like a true nickel. Like, he can cover in the slot like he's a corner. He can also play outside if you need to, which I don't think he's going to, but that's how versatile Quan is in terms of the physical traits and the mental ability that he has to execute at multiple positions. And that chess piece to move around the defense, to feel confident that no matter where Quan Martin lines up, gives Joe Witt Jr. a lot of options, and it's going to allow him to rotate all these other pieces that I keep talking about, the roles. It's going to allow those guys to rotate around, Quan to stay on the field, and you to change personnel pretty seamlessly because he physically can handle it. He can execute all of the jobs that you need, and mentally he can handle it, which is pretty special.
Number 4.
Wild card. Okay, let's talk about the roles here. You're going to have different personnel groupings, obviously based off what the offense puts on the field. If you're in a base offense with 2 wide receivers, 2 running backs, a tight end, which really isn't used that much anymore, or even 2 tight ends, 1 running back, which is used more often, then you're probably in your base defense. But you could also be in something where you have 3 safeties on the field, and maybe Derek Forrest comes in over top and Jeremy Chin is playing a quasi linebacker role. So that's going to be one. It's kind of this, what I'm going to call the hybrid, where you have a safety who's essentially playing linebacker, but more as a base defense type of look, where everything else is pretty normal except for that one substitution. You're then going to have a Buffalo nickel role, where you're essentially going to be in more of a nickel defense, where that player is not lined up as an off-ball linebacker, but is a little farther outside. He's over a slot receiver or a tight end split out, but really a slot receiver against what we call 11 personnel, 3 wide receivers on the field for the offense. And I think that's where Quan Martin really shines, where all of a sudden Defoe comes in, and it's him and Chin, and then Quan is playing in that slot, and his ability to cover that guy while still being a solid run player versus, say, a Mike Sainristil who's a true nickel. You give up something in the run game, and against certain teams, that's a big problem. Quan helps fix that problem. You stay solid in the run game, but you don't lose anything in the pass game. That's why that versatility becomes so important. That's why Quan is kind of the wild card player. But I think when we talk about that ability, as offenses try to get defenses in light personnel and run on them, take advantage of take what the defense gives you NFL style, right? Dominique Hampton becomes a massively interesting chess piece for this team because at 6'3", 220 coming in, meaning he could, by the time, he gets through his first NFL season and an NFL offseason, but even probably during some of this offseason, I wouldn't be surprised if he put on a little bit of weight. And that dude's 6'3", 230, he's linebacker size. That's bigger than some dudes that are playing linebacker for this team and for across the NFL. And he's got safety skills. And so him down in the box, ability to cover tight ends one-on-one, the ability to maybe even match certain slot receivers, certainly to play really high-level coverage as a DB in zone, but doing it from a linebacker-type position and still not losing a ton in the run game because he's so big, he's so fast, and he's so physical. Dominique Hampton, if he can really play snaps for this team, I think becomes a really interesting chess piece where they could have Quan, Chin, Defoe, 1 linebacker, 2 corners, and Dominique Hampton on the field at the same time. And that is a ton of length. It's a ton of speed. And with Chin and Hampton in the box, you're actually not losing a ton in the run game if teams want to get funky and run out of lighter personnel. So Dominique Hampton is my wild card chess piece, and hopefully I didn't get too nerdy there explaining why.
Number 5.
Number 5 is a question that I don't know because that's how this works. Number 5, speaking of wild cards, is a question from Anthony Haney.
It is from yours truly. And Craig, to be honest, I don't know if you're ready for this one because I don't have an answer for this one. My question
Your job is to have the question, not the answer, sir.
Oh, yeah, well, that too. My question to you, now that we've gone through every defensive position group, what would you say is the best / kind of like most important position group unit on the defensive side of the ball? We just got finished talking about the safeties, how versatile they are in pass and run. We talked about the linebackers 2 days ago. I'm talking about Bobby Wagner and him being the signal caller, Frankie Louvu being able to get to the passer. And then you also got the defensive line where we got John Allen, Deron Payne, and flurry of defensive ends.
So I am going to give you a bit of a cop-out coach answer at first, but I'm going to explain myself and land on an actual answer. I promise.
Okay.
The cop-out answer is they all matter because they all need to play off of each other, right? Your coverage needs to marry with your rush. Your linebackers need to play off of good D-line play. If the D-line plays well, your linebackers need to take advantage of it. If your D-line doesn't play well, your linebackers can cover for it. Well, that's really nice. On the back end, obviously, we talked about, if they're given opportunities to jump routes and do the kinds of things that we've seen Joe Witt and Dan Quinn do in the past, then they need to take advantage of that and turn the ball over and make the most of their opportunities if balls hit them in the hands. So that it all works together, ultimately, obviously, to make a great defense. But I do think it starts up front because everything gets harder if the guys up front don't do their job. If you don't eat the right blocks or fill the right gaps or get to your gap as a D lineman, then all of a sudden you're getting blocked far more often as a linebacker. So if Deron Payne doesn't eat the double team, offensive guard gets off of the double team, gets to the second level. Now all of a sudden Bobby Wagner, instead of just running the football and making a tackle, has to shed a block and try to make a play. That's going to at the very least slow him down, if not completely take him out of the play. In the pass game, a lot of what they do is predicated on the rush getting home. If the rush doesn't get home, now you might have played perfect coverage for 3 seconds, and now you're in a scramble situation. Well, now it's a whole different ballgame. Now it's totally different, unscripted football. It's backyard football from a route concept standpoint. Slightly more organized, but you're still out of structure. And defense out of structure is hard because you're just pure reacting. There are no rules anymore. You just have to make sure you latch on and nobody gets open. And so the longer that goes on, the better chance that somebody gets open and breaks free. You have to get home with the rush. And obviously, the more effective the D-line is, the less you have to rely on adding linebackers and DBs to the rush to get that pressure, which then gives you more players in coverage and makes the math positive for you as a defense. So it has to all work together, but the piece that if it goes bad, disproportionately makes it harder on everyone else is up front. And that's, I think, honestly, one of the big reasons why I still have a lot of questions about this team this year in terms of their ability. I think they have a lot of good players. I don't know they have great players up front. And I think until they get great players up front playing greatly, specifically on the edge, because I think John and Duran are great players, then it's going to be hard to be the best version of themselves defensively. You need that Micah Parsons. You need that Von Miller. You need or Aaron Donald inside to consistently get pressure that makes everything else work. And I don't know that they have that. That is like outside of the O-line, where, by the way, if your O-line stinks, every average defense winds up being able to do that to you. Outside of O-line, that is actually probably my biggest question for this team. And, of course, Daniels. But top 3 question for this team is absolutely that. So that's my answer.
Okay, I think you did a good job of answering it then.
All right, let's get back to safety specifically then.
Number 6.
Who makes the team, Anthony? I think I've got Chin, Martin, Forrest, Butler, I think makes it because he's kind of unique from a skill set standpoint. Reeves, Hampton. 6. It's gonna be heavy at DB. But I think with the new kickoff rules and the guys that they have, I think that's not a bad idea. Because that puts us at 6 safeties counting Quan. And then we said Forbes, Juste, Sainer-Still, Davis, Anusium at corner. So that's 5. And Quan is kind of your flex safety nickel. He's your backup nickel, as well as obviously your Buffalo nickel, etc. So
11 DBs. It sounds like.
I think I'm gonna go 11.
Okay.
That or like, does Revo not make it? Does Butler not make it? Are they in a battle for a spot? Maybe.
It's a great question that we don't have to answer just yet.
Not yet, but later this week we are gonna do a 53.
Yes, sir.
So we will get to that probably on Friday or maybe tomorrow. I don't know. We'll see. It's on the list. It's on the list of things to do. We'll get a couple of practices under our belt first. When we get back, though, Terry McLaurin spoke after practice today. You'll hear from 17 next on The Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up, best thing from the show today, and real things real people said into real microphones. But right now, you'll hear from Terry McLaurin, captain number 17. Of course, back for yet another year in Washington. Interesting year for Terry ahead. It might be the best quarterback he's ever played with here. Certainly that's the hope. Certainly could be the best offense he's ever played in. Most wide receiver friendly for sure. After playing under Scott Turner and Eric Bieniemy last year. Obviously had a nice rookie year under Jay Gruden, and Jay's offense could be very wide receiver friendly at times, but that 2019 year was an absolute disaster at the quarterback position. And, of course, Jay only played or was coaching for like 6 games that year before things got handed over to Bill Callahan and Kevin O'Connell, and that was a whole mess, infighting between them and over what kind of the offense, and you had Dwayne starting, and you had Case Keenum starting at time. It's just a lot of. Was it Case? I don't even remember. There's
2020?
2019.
2019. We signed him in the offseason, so yes, Case Keenum.
Yeah, it was part Case, part Dwayne, Colt. That was the Mark Sanchez year as well.
Yep. And was Josh Johnson here as well?
I don't think Josh was here because Josh was a Jay guy, and Jay got fired.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I tried to block that year out of my brain.
Yeah.
It was my last year on the beat. A lot happened.
Not very memorable?
Memorable for all the wrong reasons. There's like distinct memories I have of that year. Like I remember 2 games in particular from that year. We'll get to what Terry said today in a second, but story time is always fun. I remember the Minnesota game where they had a chance on Thursday Night Football in Minnesota, and Dwayne got cooking a little bit, but then threw a bad pick late. And that was I think a big inflection point in terms of that staff and like Bill specifically, because I think Bill wanted to run the football a lot more. Kevin was like, let's let it loose a little bit. Like we have to be able to trust our guy a little bit more than this. And I think Kevin got Dwayne in a nice role, and there was some stuff that was happening. If I'm remembering that game correctly, like there was a couple of nice things that were happening, and then Dwayne made a bad decision because he's a rookie, and like that happened, and that was a kind of an inflection point. And then there was the Buffalo game. The weather was just awful, and like Josh Allen's ripping balls through the wind because he's Josh Allen, and like Dwayne had a cannon, and I think Bill was basically like, we're running the football every snap, and I think Kevin wanted to let it loose a little bit more because he's like, Dwayne has the arm to do it, and I think that was a bit of a struggle offensively, and heard some rumblings. I was told later there's a pretty fun fight on the headset that happened during that game. So things happen. Like that's football. It happens. But yeah, never want differing philosophies. You want a coaching staff that's cohesive, and that staff, not that Jay was the glue that was holding it together, but Jay just could overpower everyone because he was the head coach. And once Bill was the head coach, things changed. Many for the better. By the way, it should be pointed out, but some friction back in the old 2019 Washington days. As for today, Terry survived that year, survived 4 years of Rivera, and here we are. Here was McLaurin talking after his first Dan Quinn training camp practice, and actually talking about just that, how he's viewed his time with all these different quarterbacks and what he's been able to do through a very challenging career.
Yeah, I think it's a unique situation that, I was faced at this point in my career, playing with multitude different quarterbacks, sometimes multiple in the season. And I learned pretty quickly that you can't really put your focus on who's going to necessarily be back there, but you just kind of got to worry about your process and come prepared each and every day. And I think I've learned something about myself, something about the game of football, and just being a good teammate with that revolving door sometimes. And I think for myself, I just try to be a leader out there and make sure they're comfortable, you know what I mean? Because whether they're a starter or have to come in for someone who's gone down, like that's a big role. You got the team on your shoulders, and I just want them to know that they have somebody that's going to do their job that they could depend on, and that's kind of always been my focus. So obviously, I feel like the receiver position is a very dependent position, and the continuity and the connection with the quarterback and receiver is extremely important. So you would like to have that longevity so you could build that connection so you're not necessarily starting from day one every time. But, I've learned to roll with it and still put my best foot forward.
This year is obviously you're starting from ground zero. New offense, new quarterback. He does have the same position coach, which is something that I want to follow up on with either Terry or Jahan especially. Maybe I can get like a Jamison Crowder to talk to me a little bit about it. But one of these guys that was here with Bobby Ingram last year, I'm so curious how Bobby's coaching changes when the directives are different from the head coach. What changes about that? Is there more intentionality? Is something that Dan preaches a lot of versus the rudderless ship of the previous administration. Terry asked today about what's different when you compare this season to previous ones.
Definitely. I've experienced a lot in my going on 6 years here, and I could just at least speak to just this year, and I feel like the continuity from the top down is very clear what the objective is, bringing in good people who are really good at their job and are going to be competitors in what they do and bring their best selves to the building each and every day. I think that started from Mr. Harris and the ownership group, and I think that goes down to AP and DQ and our coordinators and the leaders on this team and our position coaches. So when you have that one voice, that one mission, I think it makes it very clear what the expectation is, and there's not a lot of deviation from that because if you want to be a part of this team and this organization, you have to fit that mold or you probably won't be here. But I think the great thing about it is there's no favoritism. There's no, well, because you did this here or because you had this season last year. Like, we got guys and coaches from all over the place. But one thing they have is we have a lot of guys with experience, leadership, championship pedigree, and who are competitors who want to come in and make this organization better and win together. And I think you can feel that juice. And then when you have the opportunity just to come out here and compete, that's what you love to do. You don't have to really focus on a lot of the off-field stuff we may have had, but you get to focus on football and how you get better and try to earn your spot on this team. So it's been really fun getting to know the guys. Like I said a few times, like even the first few days in the spring, we really didn't even talk a lot of football. We just got to know each other, which is new, you know what I mean? We've even mixed up the locker room where I'm sitting next to Forbes and some of the linemen, and usually you stay with your position group, but I think it helps just that continuity process a little quicker where you have those moments to spend time with guys you may not spend time with otherwise because they're not in your position room. So I could just tell we have a group of guys that are gelling well and enjoy spending time with one another, and also like to grind. And we set standards before ourselves as a team where that's what you have to hold up to if you want to be a part of this team. And I think that's great because it holds everybody accountable. Then it's on myself and it's on the other guys to hold each other accountable into that standard. As long as that doesn't deviate, then you have a good chance to have success.
Coming up next, there's one more bite I want to play from Terry, which talks about that pledge that everybody made to each other. So we'll get to that next. But just a quick thought before we go to break, which is Mitch said something. Mitch Tischler joined us at 5 o'clock. And Mitch said something that was so on point that I just want to reiterate it now, which is what Dan preaches is what is happening. And that connection of message/narrative and reality is essential for success. And Terry feels that. I think Benjamin St. Juste feels that. We talked to him today. John Allen has talked about that a little bit. He was at the podium today. Like, that matters. One, because I think they're actually doing the right things in reality. It doesn't fix the talent and some of the roster questions and all that kind of stuff. But they are going to get the most out of their team because they are doing the right things. They are not chasing narratives. They are doing actual work, and it matches the messaging, and that creates buy-in, which maximizes players, which ultimately does lead to winning. Terry on the pledge that all the players made to each other. Next, it's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. The Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And just following up real quick, the last thing we played, last segment from Terry McLaurin, he referenced a pledge that the players made to each other about what it takes to be a member of the team right now. And someone followed up and asked Terry more about that pledge.
You know, I'll probably try to keep most of it within our team, but it was essentially along the lines of just what we're.
By the way, I will pause real quick to say this answer is 1 minute and 50 seconds long. So when Terry says he's going to keep most of it in, he's still going to talk for nearly 2 minutes.
We're going to commit each and every day when we come out to this football field, not only what we're going to do on the field, but off the field, how we're going to prepare our bodies, how we're going to prepare our minds, how we're going to hold each other accountable when those things may slip. And I think one of the things that stands out the most is just, like I kind of touched on, is you can't take that personally. I think we're all competing for jobs. We're competing for respect. We're competing for some guys' contracts. So everybody has an individual aspect to it. But when you bring the team, you put the team first and you put it in writing, it forces you to be accountable, honestly, because it's like, well, I agreed to that. You know, I may have signed that, or I was part of putting those words together. So if I'm not out there upholding, whether it's finishing, whether it's taking care of my body, being accountable, like how can I expect our rookies to? And so I think that puts a good amount of accountability and pressure on our leaders, but also it forces the young guys and the guys who may, you know, be here for a year, whatever. It's just, there's one voice and one sound that the team came up with outside of the expectation of the coaches or the organization, which I think is extremely powerful. I haven't really experienced anything necessarily like that, where the guys have come up with something like that. And it was just really cool to see everybody's ideas and how they view leadership, how they view team building, and what's important to having success. And obviously we know that doesn't mean anything if we don't live up to those standards, which that's part of the pledge, but also, you know, the wins and losses are a big part of that as well. And I think that's obviously the big picture, the wins and the losses. That's why we're all here, to win. But there's things underneath winning and losing that contribute to winning and losing, if that makes sense. And I feel like there's a very, very clear set of standards that we've put forward.
That is so extraordinarily well put by McLaurin. There are things under winning and losing that contribute to winning and losing. And those are the things that you can control. And it seems like better than any team that I've covered, this team understands that. This team is working on those things. And again, I will always put this caveat in to make sure that I'm not coming off as like some super homer or whatever. You still need talent. And I don't think this team has the extraordinary amounts of talent you need to win a Super Bowl. But they are, I think, going to do the right things to figure out just how good they can be, and we'll see where that lands. But that's all you can reasonably expect once the roster is put together. And I think when we acknowledge as a fan base, as a media core, as a Commanders ecosystem who's looking at this from the outside, that this is year one of a rebuild, that's all you can possibly ask for. All right. More from Terry potentially tomorrow. Obviously, fresh new day of camp, fresh new day of people talking. We'll see what we get to tomorrow. Anthony, what is the best thing that you pulled from the show today?
I got your chat with Benjamin St. Juste, and it was the last question where he was talking about
his sister-in-law.
Yeah.
His sister-in-law is not just some average sister-in-law. With all due respect to all the sister-in-laws out there. His sister-in-law is Anna Hall, who's about to try to claim the title of best female athlete in the world by winning the heptathlon in the Olympics. And so I asked Benjamin, what events do you think would be your best shot to beat her, and which events would go the most poorly?
Of the events that she competes in, which one would you have the best chance competing against her in, and which one would be the absolute worst for you?
Best one, I would probably say maybe a 200. Anything.
I feel like one of the sprints is the obvious right answer.
Maybe with a little bit of technique, like a high jump, I could be decent. But a 200, anything over 200, she's whooping my butt. But I would say the 200. But honestly, I'm just saying that because you asked me, she would whoop me at every event.
Humility is very important. Benjamin St. Juste, appreciate you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
Of course, the full interview available in our podcast feed. Make sure you check that out when you get a chance. Just search The Hoffman Show in your favorite podcast app. And for the record, Anthony, a couple of days ago, Anna Hall set her season's best in the 200 meters. Can you guess how fast Anna Hall, Olympic heptathlete, ran the 200 meters?
I'm going to say 22.5.
Little fast. That would be more of if she was an actual 200-meter runner. Because remember, she also has to do the 400-meter hurdles. She has to do a shot put. And yet she still ran a 23.8.
That's really good.
That's insanely fast.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's all that. And now we do the last thing we do on this very silly radio show, which is real things real people said into real microphones. Come on. There we go.
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5 and 11. Not very good.
Said into real microphones.
The culture is actually damn good.
We got a bunch of great stuff today. We didn't actually, there was the Kate Martin bite that you sent me on Instagram, Anthony, would have actually been a great fit for the segment because what she said when she went back to Iowa was very similar to the Terry stuff, but it's also similar to this. I've referenced this interview a couple times today. Sean McVay on the Athletic Football Show with my guy Robert Mays talked about being a leader and being self-aware in ways that he just wasn't when he was a younger coach.
But the main things I'd say, it's epic self-talk. I think it's really identifying what are the values and principles that are true to your heart that embody being the person you want to be, and what does that look like, and how does that come to life in your personal and professional life? And then, getting your rest, taking care of yourself. I can't be the leader I want to be if I'm not right. And that's not selfish. That's just being real. And I think that awareness, my self-awareness was very far from where it is now. Have I had my moments where I get pissed off? Absolutely. But I think I'm better equipped with the people that I'm around and some of the habits that you implement that are daily things to not go back to those places and to try to be the best coach I can be and best husband and father.
I'm so happy to see the NFL world and the sports world getting to a better place that's better for people that also is creating really cool stuff. Like Sean McVay is one of the most innovative minds in the history of the NFL. And he can't be that. His creativity cannot shine if he is getting 2 hours of sleep every night and sleeping in his office and he's a miserable human. That's not how creativity works. Like, there's mountains and mountains of scientific research. Not to mention, it would suck to be around. And so this idea of like this, for lack of a better word, old school, but really outdated idea of toughness, of what working hard means, what it means to do all these things is just dying. And it's being replaced by, ironically, one of the best examples of this is Bruce Arians. Bruce Arians would say, I won't fire you for going home. Or like, I will fire you if you miss your kid's recital. I won't fire you for sleeping in your office type of thing. We're like, I want you to go to your kid's recital, not sleep in your office. I want you to be home. I want you to be present. I want you to be a full person because you'll actually be better at your job as well. And to hear McVay say that was pretty cool. All right, that's our show.